Hi everyone, today I'm gonna compare two war-themed artwork, and one is called The Consequence of War, and other one is by Goya, it's called The 3rd of May 1808. Before diving in, I wanna first introduce about the war paintings in general. So war painting are actually the artwork that depicts the events, consequence, or the experience of the war. This work can range from glorifying the military triumphs to criticizing the devastation and suffering of the conflict. And according to their histories, the first origins from the ancient Greece and Roman empires, and the early depictions of war celebrating heroic victories and focus on the valors of leaders and soldiers. And after that, when proceed to the medieval areas, they become more religious and serve as the religious diagram describe with the descriptions of battles and frame the conflict as part of divine plan. And when it comes to Renaissance and Baroque period, it shifts toward more allegorical representations, where the world was depicted through methodological or symbolic figures, just like the art we're going to discuss, and focus on the moral and intellectual reflections on war impact on society. And when we proceed to the Romanticism and the Realism, it becomes more direct and human-centered rather than focus on the myth. It approaches and emerge focus on the suffering and emotional toll of the war. And finally, in the modern period, and for most of them contemporary works, they shape to the documentary to document the real life experience of artwork and the war, the damage caused by the war and its aftermath. And today, the first artwork I'm gonna introduce is by Peter Paul Rubens. It's called The Consequence of War and created in 1638. It's a Baroque art and its allegorical paintings address the devastations caused by the 30 Years' War, and is commissioned by the Grand Duke of Tuscany and reflecting the political and moral concerns of that time. And the second artwork is created in 1914 and is a romantic realism painting and depicting the brutal execution of Spanish surveillance by French force during the Peninsular War. And is commissioned after the war, memorized the Spanish resistance to Napoleon. Here are some of the contexts of the Rubens' Consequence of War. Several decades before the war starts, we have a movement called the Reformation, the Counter-Reformations. The Reformation was initiated by the person called Martin Luther, and the Counter-Reformation is initiated by the Catholic Church in response to the Protestant Reformations. That emphasized the use of art to communicate religious and moral message to the faithful. And art was meant to inspire the piety, invoke strong emotions, and reinforce Catholic values such as peace, harmony, and divine orders. So Rubens' painting aligned with this aim by allegorizing the devastating effect of war and contrasting them with ideals, peace, love, and order. And as a diplomat as well as an artist, he was deeply committed to the peace and used art to try to advocate against the destructiveness of the war. And these are some of the primary sources in the pictures and collected from some books, and they are actually Robin's letters himself depicting his artwork, this artwork particular, and its kind of effect and descriptions. And now let's move to the actual artwork. This artwork I'm showing is the consequence of war, and I want to talk about the central figures first. The third central figure is the Mars, which is the god of war, and strides forward with a blood-stained sword and shield. He dragged with fury at Venus, which is the god of law, and try to hold him back, but fails. We can see the chaos and destructions in this artwork, and that kind of show the damage brought by wars accompany Mars and symbolizing the aftermath. And we can also see there's a woman with a broken lute, which kind of symbolizes harmony, and lies on the ground, representing the collapse of cultural and social harmony. As for the symbolisms in this art, there are some symbolisms. One of them is the olive branch and the caduceus, symbols of peace and diplomacy, are kind of discarded. And there's also a grieving woman, which is symbolizing Europe, dressed in the black with torn veil, symbolizing the continent's suffering during the war. And as for the visual style, it's kind of dynamic compositions with rolling figures that create a sense of motion and chaos, and the dramatic contrast, the light and shadows, emphasize the emotional density. And the color use is also very vibrant and warm. You can see the red and gold are dominated and heightening the drama. So the key message of this artwork kind of want to say that the war leads to the destruction of culture, harmony, and prosperity. And this style invites a viewer to contemplate these ideas intellectually and emotionally. And the second work is by Goya, called The 3rd of May 1808. As for the context of this artwork, is painting in response to the Napoleonic occupation of Spain and the massacre of Spanish civilians during the Peninsular War. It reflects Goya's personal experience with war and his empathy of its victims. And as for the central scene of this one, we can see the fire squad of French soldiers aim rifles at a group of Spanish civilians, and the central figures, which is a man in the white shirt and yellow pants, raises his arm in the gestures of surrender. The background setting is kind of darkened landscape with a church visible in the distance, kind of contrast with the harsh spotlight on the central figures. The piles of dead bodies on the ground emphasize the brutality and the inevitability of the massacre. And here are some symbolizings in this art. The first is the white shirt person is kind of Christ-like figures. The man in white with his arm raised resembles Christ's solemn and symbolizes sacrifice and innocence. And the dehumanized soldiers, these French soldiers are depicted faceless, emphasize their role as instrument war rather than individuals. And the use of light is kind of also, we can see a lantern illuminate the victims and focus on the humanity, while the soldiers are cast in shadow, symbolizing the humanist nature of the war. So this is kind of different from the first work because the color use is kind of more light and odd than the first one, because the first one is kind of more vibrant. So the key message that Goya is trying to convey is war is a senseless and dehumanizing force that target to innocent lives. And Goya's work moved beyond intellectual reflections, seeking to elicit an emotional response. So in conclusions, the Rubens kind of uses his style and artwork to try to invite intellectual contemplation through allegory and methodological symbolisms, whereas Goya will kind of appeal more directly by the heart through raw, unflinching realism, by the direct depiction of people of the war to let people realize its damage. And that's my presentation. Thank you.